Welcome to the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller. Brought to you by Growth Experts. You are in store for a chat about funding, marketing, startups, and all things growth.
Hello and welcome back to the Funded Now What podcast. I'm your host, AndrewStartups, and I am super excited today because I've got the founder and CEO of Nosible AI. They just raised $1 million, and I'm not kidding you. They're going to kill Google. It's an incredible thing. You got to listen up. Stuart, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to tell everyone about what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're going to get a lot of marketing advice because you are a quant. Tell everybody what a quant is before we go any further.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So like quants are people who try and make sense of the markets, and the markets don't make sense. So they're, that's what we do. We're building models. We're processing massive amounts of data. We're trying to predict what's going to happen, price risk, and make investments. Yeah.
Very cool. That's a good way of putting it. Everyone tries to make sense of the market though. But your level is on another level. You're a quantitative analyst and, an expert number cruncher, math guy, geek, if you would say, no offense. And you have figured out that there is what problem? What problem does Nosible solve? Because I can try and explain it, but it's not going to do it justice. So you say it and then I'll make more sense marketing wise.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it the way that I think about it. And the way I think about it is that search was built for people. And people have very different constraints and different requirements to what AI has, right? Like if I go to Google and I put in a search term and I get back 10 search results, like the best search result better be in the top 3 or I'm probably not going to click on it, right? So I never ever go to page 2 of Google. Do you? Like no one does, right?
Sorry to interrupt you. I'm a search marketing consultant, so
okay,
I like to support the little guys. I go to the 3rd, 4th, 5th page to like give somebody checks their analytics. We got to click today, and I feel that joy for them, and so I do, but nobody else does.
Well, in many ways, then I think you're a bit more like AI than most people, right? Because like for what I see is like that, for AI, it doesn't matter. It's like, it doesn't matter if it takes a little bit longer to come back. It doesn't matter if there's 10 links. It doesn't matter if the top link is number 1. Like whether a link is like number 3, 33 or 330 in your search results, like in AI, if the AI thinks that that's the most relevant one, it's going to navigate to that page. It's going to pull in that context, pull in that information. And that's because the way that AI thinks and that kind of intelligence is very different to us. So what we're building is a search engine for AI agents, web scale search engine. So, that's the way that I like to think about it. I think that there are a lot of things that we can go into on that, but I don't want to belabor the points too early on.
Awesome. So right now, every GPT AI agent out there is using Google and other available resources on the internet. How is Nosible any different than that? I remember we had a pre-call and you made it very clear, so I want to start there so people understand.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And you're exactly right. Like, I think everybody who's building AI systems right now is thinking about how do we make these AI systems smarter? How do we make them more reliable? How do we make them more factually grounded? And the way to do that is by connecting them to search engines. Search engines know everything that's happening in the world in real time. They're up to date. They don't have many of the, they overcome many of the shortcomings that large language models and AI systems have. But like I said, the systems weren't built for AI systems. So like some of the subtle differences, and I'll use analogies here, is like, imagine if you went to Google, but instead of like having one input box, there was 10 and you had to write your same query 10 times. Like Google would do a much better job of finding documents for you, but no person would ever do something so insane. But for an AI, like why not, right? Like why not just like put in 10 search terms? Like if they're very similar, you're going to hit the same parts of the database. So you can leverage a lot of caching. You can do 10 and instead of it being 10 times more expensive, it's maybe 15%, slower. So that's like a small difference. Also returning a lot of text. Like, we have search endpoints that will return up to 10,000 search results, top search results, like for any given query. That's something that's substantially different. But the biggest differentiator is cost, right? Like we're trying to make it very affordable to do lots of search, because we think that that's exactly what AI is going to want to do in the future. And I think we're seeing it with like deep research from Google and from OpenAI. Like these systems rely very heavily on search. But if you're paying $50 for 1,000 searches every single time you ask a question, your $20 subscription is going to go halfway through a question, right? So, we've got to change things.
Love it. I love the analogies. Makes it easy to understand, even if someone's in tech. I really appreciate it because, it is hard to explain a company like this. So let's talk about who you're selling to, because like you said, it's for the AI agents. It's for the companies and the products and the tools that are making millions and hundreds of thousands of searches simultaneously. Who is an early adopter of this product?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we have 3 verticals that we're super focused on right now. So one is like quant funds who have an insatiable appetite for data that they can trade off of and make good decisions. And they're interested in hundreds of millions, or even in some cases like billions of searches. And how do we deliver that to them in a way that they can plug into their backtests and simulations? So that's a strong vertical, and that's my background personally as well. So I speak their language, and we hang out in the same places, so I know how to service that market much better than the other 2. The other 2 that we're focused on is media companies, people who are running digital advertising campaigns online. They want to be running advertisements that are on relevant pages. So contextual and semantic advertising is a big trend, and we have a very powerful search engine for doing that. And then the third is AI companies. So people who are building AI agents, AI systems, people who are building, internal AI agents at their different companies that need to not only connect to internal information, but also like what is happening in the world. Mm-hmm. That would also be a target market for us.
Makes sense. And out of the 3, obviously, you're probably scaling the industry that you're already inside of the fastest, but I do think the third opportunity is very fruitful as well, because all of these AI companies also are desperate to find differentiation between each other. And so if they have access to some kind of ability to do more faster, better, cheaper, that all of a sudden makes it a way more investable product and a way more better. Way more, that doesn't sound super intelligent, a way more unique and end result for the end user because they've got a better product. And so are you leveraging that? How's that working?
Yeah, we're trying to. I think, we're having conversations. We're talking to people who are running AI companies and who are thinking about these things. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? So everybody in the world is talking, or in the AI world is talking about scaling laws, right? Which is like you throw more GPUs at a problem, you end up with a smarter LLM. You throw more data at a problem, you get a smarter large language model. Same with like test time compute, like reasoning, like spending more time like thinking about an answer before actually generating the answer. It's the same thing. One of the interesting things is that like search is also a scaling law. In the sense that if you spend much more time like searching for relevant information, curating those like context windows in your large language models very well, and then you're passing that to the LLM, like generally you can get significantly better results. Like Google came out with a paper end of last year where they were able to show 55% improvements across the board on Q&A benchmarks. And really all that they did differently was just spending a lot more time and effort on search and curating like high quality context windows. So I think that for any company who is looking for a differentiator and trying to, that is a very slept on scaling law. And it's the kind of scaling law that you could apply right now, right? Like you don't have to have 10,000 H100s to do it.
No, you just start paying Nosible and then you're good. And you're good to go.
We're a lot cheaper than everyone else, so it's not so bad.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so these customers, I forgot to mention the coolest part of this podcast is that you are currently in Johannesburg and I am in Sao Paulo, which are closer than we normally are when we chat. But are the clients in Africa? Who are you pitching to? Who's the early adopter? Where are these companies that are working with your product?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some early adopters in South Africa and Africa for sure. Like, I'm going to be going to Kenya hopefully soon, and hopefully I'll meet some more people there as well.
Nice.
But for the most part, I'd say that 95% plus of our market is in the US, UK, and Europe, and potentially like Singapore. And they're very concentrated in like a handful of cities as well. It's like New York, Chicago, London, Singapore, Hong Kong. Like, that's really where...
Yeah. San Francisco?
Yeah, San Francisco is cool, but it's a one industry town. It's like, it's sick, and I love being there, but it's not finance and media are not there,
That's fair,
so it's like one out of three,
Yeah, no, that's true. You need all three. Yeah, but we are, I believe, on the cutting edge of most AI companies. I mean, having this podcast,
100%.
I have to turn away startup founders in San Francisco every day because I want to highlight stories of founders outside of San Francisco, but like over and over again, AI companies are raising money there. And that's how I know, they're all like really struggling to stand apart, and that should be an easy sales cycle for you if it's like, hey, do this and we'll make you that much better. So don't, sleep on, to use your own word, San Francisco, man. But
no, definitely not. I mean, I was just there. I was just there, and I'll probably be there again very soon. So, and the weather is certainly very nice. It's kind of like Cape Town,
London. I mean, Josie's got good weather as well, but the difference, I think, also in San Francisco is we have a strong belief in being a risk taker and being an early adopter of other tech companies and other startups, whereas you will have a longer sales cycle with a bank or retail or startup. I mean, I'm a non-startup investment and fintech related thing anywhere else in the world. Whereas in San Francisco, you can, get some revenue in the door from companies that are like, whatever, this helps our bottom line. We'll use it. We don't care if they're GDPR compliant, and you're, because it's a tough thing to explain that, in the UK, way more worried about risk and compliance and things than we are in the US. And so, not to delay hearing all of your amazing fundraising info, but
well, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah. I mean, we moved from the UK, like we were originally domiciled there. We've moved to the US. So, and for many of the reasons that you just highlighted, and also just, I think the capital markets are a lot more risk seeking and a lot more mature.
Fair. Yeah. Awesome. Great. Well, we know that's good to know. So you raised $1 million for a company that's not super easy to explain, but the problem is very large that you're solving. So that I think that makes it a little easier, but like where you're physically based, not easy. How did you do this? I mean, you have a lot of background in different things that are unrelated, but kind of related because it's finance related. That might also de-risk some investors. But, how hard was it? I guess the first question is, how many calls did you have to do to close this mill?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. We didn't talk to too many investors. Awesome. We met with a few. I think almost all of them were kind of interested in what we were saying and what we were doing, and in the technology that we've developed. Like our benchmarks, like our performance is very good. So we went very much based on vibes and like who we got along with the most. I'm very happy to say that, we took some capital from Atlantica Ventures. They're an amazing fund based out in Washington, D.C., extremely hands-on, and their mandate is to really find interesting African tech startups and that have a global proposition and then help them go global. So, I mean, the next steps for us is we're building out a team stateside, and just trying to grow and scale and accelerate. But I mean, the fundraising process wasn't a walk in the park either. Like, I think it's quite difficult to communicate like what it is that you do. Like when you're building it day to day, like a lot of the times the future is very obvious to you. But then when you start having these conversations, you realize that it's obvious only in your mind, and you can't actually articulate what the hell is like going on in your head. Like for us, we spent probably 6 months refining our deck. Like it wasn't full time, like we were building and scaling the search engine while we were doing it. But we had 5 versions of the deck in total, and we sent it to every friend that we have in the space, like on the hedge fund side and everywhere. And we just got criticized like you can't believe until the criticism stopped and people started complimenting like what we sent them, and that's when we knew we were kind of ready. Wow. And that's where we're at now with like our presentation and our pitching, and that was a very painful process. Like, I think, you know, the advice I would have is just like stick with it and just keep going, and, you know, don't shy away from the criticism. Like, if someone is asking you a quote unquote stupid question, it's probably because you screwed up like in your slides, and you should have preempted that and answered it, right? So you just got to be humble.
There's a lot of advice there. I do get a lot of people. I always forget to preempt the calls saying, don't say, stick with it anymore, because people do say that. But that is, you know, there's only two possible outcomes. You either give up or you're successful. And if you just keep iterating, there's only a finite number of times you can fail. And what I really want to hone in on that I don't think anybody said is, before you even go pitch an investor, just keep showing it to people you know until the criticism stops there. And then you're ready to start getting punched in the face by investors, because it's not going to be, but really, so, because in the beginning you said it wasn't that many people I had to speak to, but that's because you had 6 months of getting punched in the face by people you know beforehand. And you were polished enough to actually only have to do, you know, maybe a dozen calls or something, instead of most people go straight to the investors and don't know how many doors got slammed in their face because they were polishing their pitch with the actual people they needed to be showing a polished pitch to. So I think that's actually really unique advice, is like, don't even think you're ready. Because I see that also when I work with startups, you know, like, we're going to get into your website in a little bit. And if we were working together and you were like, go get us more clients tomorrow, I'd be like, no, we need to stay and work on this pitch on the website first, this foundational element, before you're ready to go do anything else. And that's almost 100% the case with companies that I consult with. And so I love that from a early stage startup founder. You think you're getting some revenue, you're ready to go pitch investors, go pitch people you know first. And until you hear crickets and only positive crickets on the negative side and only positive sentiments on the other side, then you're ready to, or you're not ready yet until that moment. And so that's really good advice. But you got to also know a lot of the right people. And, you know, I think you also mentioned talking to customers or people in the hedge fund space, which are potential customers of yours. That's also something that most people can't do. That's because you have a background in the space. So still really awesome. You know, did you have to physically, did you try and raise in South Africa, or, you know, did anybody get a check-in from out there at all? No. All of our fundraising is actually from outside of South Africa. That's a shame. We had it is. I do think that the cultures are quite different, and I do think that like Nosible maybe doesn't fit the thesis, the typical pattern of like a South African startup per se. That's fair.
I think we're quite different, but it's You mean like the stereotypical African startup working on like agri-tech and like, you know, like things to I used to work in agri-tech actually. Yeah. The first ever like search problem I worked on was at an agri-tech startup.
Interesting.
I'll tell you. I mean, it's a bit of a detour, but you'll find it very interesting. So I mean, I worked at a really interesting startup in that like very pivotal phase of like Series A to Series B. I was head of their data science. I was taking a year off from finance to work through some restraint of trades and, you know, other things. So I had to do something different. And, you know,
I always talk to these quants and traders. They always still have their hair, no gray, whatever. And here I am. Startups are way more stressful. Get ready for this, bro.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know you're going to lose in the markets, right? So it's like you're used to getting kicked in the ass. But so I work for a drone tech company that was flying drones over orchards and using computer vision models to identify trees and fruit that had issues. And the first ever search problem I saw, I wasn't actually working on it. Somebody in my team was. He was doing blueberry detection on blueberry bushes, and he wanted to build a system where you could put in a certain blueberry and find all the other blueberries that kind of like matched, like had the same shape and color and texture. And that's quite important for working out how mature the bushes are. right? So that was like my first ever introduction to search. Like most people's like first introduction to like search and getting into search engines is like building something around text. But for me, it was actually like, I don't know,
Blueberry search,
looking over a shoulder and learning about like embedding models and blueberries and stuff. So pretty interesting. But that is not like a typical South African startup per se. No. But more just saying that I think that, you know, like what we're building, like almost all of the market is overseas. Like many South African startups already have a lot of customers like in South Africa. And some of it is quite bespoke and might not be applicable to other markets. Whereas we're like almost like the flip side of that. Yeah.
You know, for people that aren't listening, that aren't aware, people that are listening that aren't aware, I don't think people know what a robust infrastructure for business South Africa even has. You know, my wife is South African, and she grew up in the U.S. and got like the ridiculously ignorant comments that I'm sure you also get even at like a work scenario. But it's pretty much the business capital as a country of Africa. I mean, my Nigerians that are listening might be upset about that, but you know, infrastructure wise, besides like load shedding times, which if you don't know what that is, you can Google it, but you knew it was going to come up at least once. But there is a really robust startup scene. I myself have volunteered with some startup orgs in Cape Town and Johannesburg, and I actually even met my wife from doing a startup talk in Josie many, many years ago. So that's why I was so excited when I read the news of you raising money. But you're right. I mean, I reached out because you are different. Like a lot of the same kinds of companies get funded, and you're right, they do have to prove a lot more in South Africa, like to raise funding. And so it makes sense that you raised outside. Also, like, it's not that there isn't innovation there, but it's definitely lagged a bit behind like US as far as like what you're working on. Like, and so that makes sense. But cool. All right, let's get into the ripping you apart marketing wise part of the podcast. Cool. If you
sounds
don't
good.
mind. So this is where I like to create as much value as possible. So you're already out there selling. I think usually with companies at your stage, they've maxed out the founder network. Is that true? Like you've done that. Is that true, or you're still squeezing juice out of that?
What do you mean by that exactly?
Like, you know, your early customers were people that you knew, I think, right? Like from your previous days in the space?
Yeah, I think that we probably still got a few more triggers to pull on that front, but kind of saving them for like when we're, now actually. Like.
Okay, well, you don't need any help doing that. I mean, like I definitely do still optimize like sales processes and stuff. But I mean, the main thing for that is just, you know, creating case study material. And, you know, we have AI to do that now, so we don't really need to go deep on how to do that. But I will just say, you know, how many happy customers do you have total? Can you say?
Yeah, we've got dozens of happy customers. Yeah. And
so, not all of them, especially in this kind of a, you know, like I wouldn't call it, I don't know. They don't always want to publicize that they're the brand that's using any specific tool. They don't want to give away their secret leverage. So it might be harder than average to create case studies. So my first piece of advice is to give them financial incentive to do so. So it's also a really good thing for closing customers. I mean, not to go deep on sales here, but marketing and sales work together even more than marketing and engineering. But, you know, I love the marketing discount. And so, you know, if you're trying to close a customer and they're price sensitive, you can say, okay, let me talk to Andrew, my VP of marketing or CMO, whatever. Even if Andrew doesn't work there, they'll never be able to find me on LinkedIn because there's a million of them. So then you come back with marketing at email address and you say, hey, my CEO Stuart got in touch and said that you guys were looking for a discount, and I'm able to greenlight this if you're willing to participate in a case study. And I have gotten very big logo customers for companies to agree to that, like over $2,500 savings and stuff. And so create dozens of customers. Step one, I think, is creating case studies and content out of what they're able to achieve as much as you can. Like, you know, time saving, velocity of search seems to be the main thing. You know, cost saving is important too. Maybe privately they care more about cost, but they want to outwardly project to their customers that we're the fastest and we're saving all this time for you, and we're, finding the right trade for you because we're using this AI faster, blah, blah, blah. But privately, they're like, our bottom line is being helped. So I think that's important. Are you doing that kind of case study stuff yet?
No, we need to be. People have definitely asked us for case studies, and we've we're starting to like prioritize these kinds of things now, and it's a big shortcoming that we haven't.
There you go.
So I take the point
right away. I got it right.
I take the
right
point.
Away. Well, it's important. It shouldn't be the CEO begging for these things either. Especially when you're working with these like large organizations. If you don't want to look like a tiny little startup. And so it sounds like it's the right time to maybe bring in a marketing consultant, not selling you on this call at all. But, I think we also had another call and we were like, oh shit, this sounds really interesting to work together. But whether it's me or someone super cheap and incredibly talented in South Africa, because I also hire there, it's unreal, the talent in Johannesburg specifically. No shade on Cape Town, but it's like a lazy, relaxing vacation place. So it's not the same, you know the difference. And, either way, having somebody that's full-time focused on that, I think will be really important, because you have to work with the client. Usually they're not forthcoming with everything that's the success. So it takes like Zoom calls and interviews and many emails back and forth to create that case study stuff. And then it's trial and error, just like the 6 decks that got shut down in the past. There's the kind of the same with, hey, showing this to the CEO, aka you, and seeing if the case study really resonates with what the client is looking for. Because at the end of the day, it's supposed to excite and de-risk the idea of working with you in their mind. And so you want.
What's the biggest like mistakes that people make with case studies? Yeah,
like not doing them because they think what you're doing right now is the biggest mistake. No. I mean, it's really simple, right? Again, we have AI. Like you can say, hey, I got this result for this customer. I want to make a case study. What's included in it? It's not like rocket science or quantitative analyses anymore. So it's really simple. It's an overview, the problem, the solution, the outcome, and that's really about it. It's not like picture heavy or anything like that. I mean, I probably already did, but I'll send you some case studies of growth experts' work, and you can just copy that. Basically, we've got some really good ones. Shout out to us. But so that's one thing, and that's really. And then the next thing after that is basically doing outbound sales, and I think like the top of the funnel for that is just email and LinkedIn. And you have you have 3 major targets, or like industry wise. And so breaking that down inside of that, there's probably 3 people inside of each organization that might be the person to hit up. And I know I've talked about this a lot on the podcast probably, but just it's so important. You want to try top down approach. So direct to C-level, just owner, president, et cetera. Mid-level is maybe your, director, like your chief revenue officer or something, like someone that's in charge of making more money and finding that unique selling point for their AI company or for their hedge fund or whatever, and expanding the margin that they're getting. And then the bottom is like the person whose life this will really help, their job that it'll really help, their life it'll make easier, but it's only going to help them. So that I don't really know the exact role. There's probably one different in each company, but it could be like the search engineer at the search director at an AI startup or something. That's like, oh my God, having this, or the person that's tasked with getting the new GPUs that you're going to be saving them money on, they don't need because they can run searches more efficiently through you. So that person usually is the fastest adopter to the outreach. They're able to be like, oh my God, they understand what you're doing right away. They're not that inundated with similarly valuable messages as much. And so they can become a champion, but they have to move it up the ladder. So the sales cycle is longer. So you want to test that and see. But the mid-level, it's hit or miss, 50-50, depending on if it's the right time, if they're not stressed on product launches or whatever else is happening in their world. And then the top down, usually the lowest response because they're dealing with everything else, but the shortest sales cycle. If you go to the C-level person, and they can understand that they get more velocity and more cost savings from the very beginning, then they just tell everyone else that we're going to use this thing. After one 30-minute call, you could have a closed customer. So you need to test all three of those. So that's 9 different messaging tests right there with LinkedIn and email. Are you doing something as robust as that right now?
No.
Okay. So
Definitely not.
Yeah. So there's specific companies that do just outreach, and I find that they're not very successful. I'll even like pitch a company about being fractional CMO, and they're like, we know outreach is all we really need. They come back like 3 months later. Why did our outreach not work? One, their messaging is really terrible. I have a very unique messaging strategy, which I'm comfortable to share with everybody here. I use a lot of vulgar language in my messaging. Like, as funny as it sounds, right now, Growth Experts has outbound messaging on my LinkedIn that says it literally targets AI engineers that are in a founder role. So they have a job function of engineering. They have AI keywords in their profile. And the third level of targeting is that they're in a founder role and the fourth level, I guess, is less than probably 20 employees, because that's when we know that they probably really need some help. And the message says, hey, I help other AI engineering founders on marketing because they usually suck. Something like that. So it's not like belligerently vulgar, but it's ridiculous how much that works. Like 1 out of every 10 is like, thanks for insulting me in your message, Andrew, but I'll bite, or something like that. But a lot of them are like, yeah, we suck at this. You and I were talking before we started recording. That's my wheelhouse and what I've done for almost 20 years, because you're a super smart guy, and you know that you can't be really good at everything.
I can't do that. Yeah, I can't do that.
You're not doing that.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm trying to do is find the right people that can kind of like help me unlock these
there
problems.
You go. That is the difference between success and failure as a founder. The people that try to do, especially, I don't know if you know, like the median age of exiting founders is now like 47, because really young people, especially in America, think they can do everything because AI is doing so much more. We're trying to build the first $1 billion one-person company, like everybody is, not me personally. And so people are really hell-bent on not getting help. And also one generation before that, like the boomers in America, are also like not into asking for help. And so we're like that in that mid space where now we know that to be successful, you have to be really open to. I mean, back in the day when I was still working full time for companies, I would hear this a lot. Like, I'm smart enough to know that I need to hire someone smarter than myself. And then that guy would exit, or girl, would exit. And so I know that that's a big green flag, as the kids say. So that's great that you know that. So outreach messaging is really important. The second thing that's really important to that is doing PR. And so I found you through some of the PR that you did, which is low-hanging fruit around the raise. And I'm sure Atlantica might have helped with some of that. But the problem that you're trying to solve and the industries that you're playing in are like PR gold. And so really going niche to those, or say niche, I think you say. No, you say niche in communist countries. So yeah. So segmenting your PR focus to those 3 niches that you're focused on, like startup media, really easy, AI media, really easy. Everyone wants to talk about, and you are doing something so different because I know I've said this before on the podcast, but you are trying to help all other AI companies. So that makes it a story that's really valuable, as opposed to another version, a wrapper over ChatGPT for this kind of small business, or this different use case for an LLM that's maybe played out. You're actually building a framework to help all these companies move faster and like move into 2028 or whatever it is. And so that, I think, is a really exciting story. And the reason that's important is, one, you get inbound interest from that. If it's on, if an article in Quant Daily magazine or whatever, someone reads that and goes, oh shit, this is going to be our leg up on the competition. They're going to come inbound, and dude, that sales cycle generally is extremely short. And so that's important. Might not happen as much for this, but even more is when we're doing that outreach, first message, I like very direct. Second message, hey, we got this article that you check this article out. Then third message is, would you like to meet with our CEO? Or here's the case study that we just achieved blank results for blank company that you actually know about. They're going to respond to some of that after they see a Forbes article and they see a case study from a company they know. They're very likely to be like, oh shit, we need to take this meeting. And so the messaging changes from just a sales pitch to kind of very confident, look at this stuff and this content. And so it all kind of works together. And I think that's why a lot of outreach is not successful for other businesses and successful when I do it because I make sure that we have those pieces handled. And then the last thing that I'll go hard on is your website is terrible and we've got to work on it, and we're going to workshop it right now. So when I look at it, I do see like, it looks kind of like a GPT that I'm like searching through. And I think that's maybe by design. So people are currently able to run a search on the site, right?
Yeah. You can go and ask it any question and you'll see that it does a lot of searches. And at the end, you'll see like that you can request an API key and you can click on the search results and see kind of like what comes back. We built it more as like a shop window per se, because I think one of the challenges we had was that we would go to people and we talk to them about search and they'd be like, it's a little bit like unless you've really sat down and thought about it a lot, like it's probably not something that a lot of people have thought about. So for us to like demonstrate to them, like, well, look at how good an answer can be if you do 10 searches and you pull in 100 search results each with 256 words per search result. And each one of those was also bolstered by 10 expanded queries, right? Like you can, it kind of like sells the point. But the problem we have is that now it looks too much like a something like somebody else's product, right? And it's like, you know, what I really want people to do is kind of like take inspiration from what we built and kind of go take it from there. We've even toyed around with the idea of like open sourcing like the front end, because that's
no, we don't like that as a startup investor to hear that you're going to do that, because look what happened to Tesla. They made everything like super open source and it sounded so awesome. And now they're just getting passed up by China hardcore. And so
just the front end, not the like secret sauce that powers the whole search engine. Yeah.
Okay.
So don't stress too much.
Well, I don't like giving anything away when we're an early stage startup. You still have a 90% fail rate for the stage that you're at, maybe less because of the space that you're in and your knowledge. Maybe I'll give you 75. And so we don't want to risk that. So that's what I was going to hone in on. I don't want, first of all, does it work? Does giving them the opportunity to test the product lead to sales yet?
It does.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, it definitely.
Right, good for you.
It definitely does work. I do think that though, that a lot of people are like confused by the positioning. Yeah. I don't think it's like the most obvious thing.
At the end of the day, I'm not the customer. And so if it's confusing me, then it's just self-selecting me as not a valuable potential customer. If somebody who is a potential customer goes there and goes, oh my God, I can see how this works, then that's fine. But I still think having a sign-up wall doesn't have to be a paywall. Like, usually for a startup that's as highly technical as this, you want to have someone contact you before they can see the product, because you might get copied, stolen ideas, whatever. I think there's more negative than positive from having it out there in the wild without getting any of their contact info. I do have a client that can surface 60% of their website visitors' email addresses and home address and LinkedIn's. Shout out to visitorconnect.com. They're not a sponsor of the podcast, but I love them and they give it to me for free. But it does work a lot. I track all the people that come to this podcast on the website, on the page on my website, and then send them an automated email. So there are ways to get the email addresses of people, but it's not as high value as if it was just a pre-recorded demo that they could click and play, and that'll push someone to be like, holy shit. So you can have a pre-recorded
I agree with you on that.
Working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think just because something has worked doesn't mean that it is the best way to do things. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you could be like, I host 5 clients out of this, but there was 10,000 visitors to the website and you might have missed out on 1,000 other sales.
Exactly.
So I think then if you on top of that, having very clear messaging that is much more easily understood and bold, like 10x your searches and 100 I don't know how to say, reduce your cost by 100x or something like that in search. Bold enough, vague enough to get me to be like, all right, I'll bite. I want a demo. And so, big, bold statement. I mean, SaaS websites, they don't reinvent the wheel for a reason. Like you want to focus on CRO. You know what CRO means?
No.
Yes. Conversion rate optimization. So conversion rate optimization means I want to reduce all the things that could possibly delight or distract a user away from making them do what I want them to do. That's why a lot of companies, when they run ads, they don't even have a scrollable landing page. It's just like big, bold text, clickable video, start now or learn more. And learn more might go to an about page that has a lot more text on it. And start now is convert, right? You don't have a menu bar as well on a lot of SaaS paid websites because we want them to just either start now or get a demo. And if it's start now, it's self-service, which I don't really recommend for this kind of a thing. I don't know. Do you have a self-service thing? Can people just sign up and get the, like you said, get the AI, API key and start? No, they got to work with you. So, so it should say, get a demo or learn more. And then the learn more page goes deep technical into shit that I wouldn't even understand, but it's like, it hammers home that you guys know what the fuck you're talking about. And then go ahead.
And we are working on some white papers for that. We have started on that process, which will be like, targeted at kind of like our customer and like telling them exactly what it is, how we're different. So we're hoping to have those like up and running. So that would tie into that quite nicely, I think.
Nice. Yeah, no, a white paper is good. You want to force a download for that. That would be further down the fold, like download our white paper on blah, 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 blah. And then they enter their email address. It automatically emails it to them after they enter their email and you're CC'd. So you can see in your email inbox the URL of the companies that downloaded that. That is a great way for you to then manually follow up after looking at them. So that's really good. But no, but I meant like an about page that goes deep into the tech. And you could also not automate the email. They enter their email and then you can validate them if they deserve the white paper or not, because maybe it's like information you don't necessarily want to share. So, I think that's all fine. I didn't even really ask, what is the main way that you're getting customers right now before we go any further?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of like network involved. Like, I think, the Quant community and the AI community is like a very connected space. So like, you meet one person and they introduce you to like another 2 or 3 people. So a lot of that has been going on. And something that we have heard is very successful and we're trying out is attending some like very specific trade/industry conferences. I'll be in New York in September. We're like sponsoring one of them, one of the big ones that happens a couple times a year. So, I mean, but we do get like 100 of exactly the right people kind of like there.
It's a year's worth of outreach in a weekend.
Yeah, so we're going to try that and see how it goes. But we're still trying to work it out. Like the vast majority of the capital we've just raised is going to go into marketing. It's allocated for like growth capital. It's for growth capital.
Perfect. Yeah. That's amazing. I wish you the best with that conference, but you're doing exactly what I don't like seeing founders do. I like to test as cheaply as possible to see if something works and then go all in on spending on it. $1 million is not a lot of money, even for marketing. But if you blow $100K on a conference and sponsoring it, I'm sure it's not that much, but it's probably in the tens of thousands, right?
A bit less, but it's expensive.
Well, you add flights and hotel and food and everything, and it gets quite a bit. As opposed to you just going in the lobby of a similar conference and tweeting like crazy at all the most important people without a ticket. That has worked time and time again for founders that I work with. We DM a month before the conference on LinkedIn, hundreds of people that we know are going to be there. We tell them that we're going to meet them. They don't even know that you don't have a ticket. So you can still get a lot of the meetings of people. And even when they're not, you reach out asking if they're going to be there. And then when they say no, then you go, okay, well, can I show you a demo? And then they say no. And then you send them a pre-recorded demo. Like you never let them get out of your world. And it's an excuse to reach out to people with a different message as well, like a one-liner that they don't think is automated or is never automated. Because like, hey, are you attending DTW this year? A client of mine's going to that conference, so it popped in my head. So I hope it's really great, but it's still a big spend in my mind. As a marketer, I'm always thinking, I'm always grading any spend versus like paid user acquisition. So, paid user ac might not be that big of a deal for this company because it's such a targeted thing. But let's imagine you ran you've been to San Francisco. I'm not sure if you noticed the billboards are all AI startups right now. This is the kind of company that would do a billboard also. Like instead of wasting millions on GPU, we can save you 100x in 20 minutes, sign up at, and then the URL, and people would be, what the fuck, So I would think about it versus that, that's $10,000 probably. And even that is generally a waste in my mind versus $10,000 spent on LinkedIn ads in all of San Francisco targeting CEOs of AI companies. You're probably going to be able to get 15 or so clients out of that spend. So I reverse engineer the expected ROI from the conference based on what I would get from spending that money on paid user acquisition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when that's finished up, you let me know how successful it was, and I'll tell you the answer of how much I think I could get for that spend in other areas. But
well, happy to try both, right? I mean, the idea is to test, right? Test, measure, and iterate, right?
Well, absolutely. But also running out of money means going out of business. And so, you're an investor by trade and, by training. And so, maybe more than me. And there's a reason why I only focus on marketing and not like handling the funds as much. But in general, I like to call myself a cheap ass marketer. And that's because we can figure out if something's going to work. Maybe like in an AI space, you need to move fast. And like, I don't know how competitive your space is and we don't really have time to get into it. But if it's really competitive space and time is worth more than money, then we go and we throw a lot of money at stuff. You know what I mean? But usually with early stage startups that have raised $1 million, we want to try and make that stretch and show that and learn as much without spending money as possible. And there are ways to do that. And so, yes, we can spend money, and it's great to hear you say that. But if we were working together, which hopefully we will, I would be like, oh, hold on, buddy. Let's not spend money and let's try and figure this out without wasting money. And that's obviously a way that I create ROI for working with me over like a founder going and just throwing money at ads. There's 3 things that I think founders blow money on. And I don't really talk about this enough. And then we'll cut it short because it's late and you need to go to bed. But not short, cut it. We've already run over, actually. But one is paid advertising. Like a founder that has no business testing an ad on Google can blow tens of thousands, if not even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I've got many examples of seeing that before I joined. Hiring too early, like a full-time head of marketing from like a big logo company that Atlantica suggests for you. Shout out to Atlantica, not saying that you would suggest a bad person, but they might be like, this person is from a really big logo AI company and they're going to help you on your next round. But that person isn't used to an early stage startup. They've been like in a padded environment with big budgets for a long time. So they're not really ready to like do all the work themselves anymore. So then there's another hire, the executor, the junior marketer that has to be hired. And then all of a sudden there's quite a large cost there and the company's burn rate has gone up exponentially. And then the third thing is working with a bunch of agencies that are like singular channel focused. And then that takes founder time. And then there's little nuanced versions of all of those. Hiring the junior marketer first means that your time needs to go towards training and managing that person, and you don't fucking have the experience or time to do that. And then worse than all of that is doing nothing with the case studies that you're working on, we're doing right now. And so I think that's the whole thing. And so I'm super excited to hear that you're ready to invest in marketing and take it on, because the signals are there. You've got happy customers. Do any customers refer any other customers?
Yeah, we do have quite a bit of that.
And that's unheard of in your space, I think, because I wouldn't want another company to know how I'm running 10 times more searches than them. You know what I mean? And so if the product is so good that they cannot keep it under wraps, that means that, yes, we have to go. On marketing. And maybe that's why your confidence on spending money is there, because you're like, the product is so good. And that actually calms me a bit as a marketer. And it's like, okay, you can spend more money. No, seriously, like that's the KPI. Yeah. People think, Andrew, we're converting customers at 20% clip. I'm like, that's great. No, it's okay, maybe Andrew, maybe it's retention. Okay, yeah, retention is good, but it's even more deeper than that. It's referral rate. If a marketer hasn't even come in and incentivized referrals yet, like get a free month, get 10,000 extra searches for every referral, whatever it might be. If we do that, then it's going to go up even more. But if they're already doing that naturally, then we've got a product that we can start dumping fuel on the fire on. And so absolutely perfect timing. And man, I think you've got the right mindset towards it because of your background. You know when it's time to make an investment and when it's time to, you're like a risk analyst by trade. And so I'm not going to tell you when and where to spend money. So yeah, do you have any questions before I let you go? I mean, I'm not supposed to end it like this, but I talked for 10 minutes just now.
No. I mean, I was just enjoying and absorbing, and I mean, this is exactly what I'm trying to expose myself to. Like this year, we've already worked a little bit with a media agency and with a creative agency, and the creative agency work went really well, and I'm very happy with that, and we're going to keep that going. But maybe to your third mistake that people make, like I don't think that like the traditional like marketing agency route was right for like the kind of product that we're building. So correct. I take on all the points. I'm just trying to learn. I appreciate you having me on and giving me some guidance, and obviously we'll keep chatting, but yeah, it was great.
Amazing. And thank you for being here. The one thing I want to actually end with, and it was my plan from the beginning, is how are you going to kill Google?
I think that we are going to do it by completely changing what search means, right? Like, I think that you can't beat Google by trying to beat Google at what they do. Like, they're the best in the world at what they do, and I have a tremendous amount of respect. And I mean, they've given us so much, right? Like we really ought to treat them better, I think, as like the general public. But I do think that that search is fundamentally changing. Like the ground is cracking open and things are changing. And what that means is that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for new entrants. We want to be one of them. We're rethinking like everything from first principles for AI and for massive scale and massive volume. And I think that they're a little bit distracted. I don't know if they're necessarily doing that. You know, they've got OpenAI napping at their heels, and I don't know if they're thinking about like fundamentally re-architecting who it is that they are and how they work at this stage.
Yeah, no, they're freaking out. Many things, even the Google ads are not really working anymore as an advertiser because of the AI overview. We're not seeing any, so they're losing revenue, they're losing ground on search, and that's why I think it's possible. I mean, it's about time. My entire career, over 20 years, Google has been a dominant force in search, and no one's ever been able to even put a dent in their business. So I think it's a high time that someone did. And so, yeah, man, Stuart Reid, it's been an absolute pleasure. Excited to see your success from inside or outside of the company, whichever way the cards unfold. And yeah, thank you so much for being here, brother. Cheers. And
thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
That has been another episode of the Funded Now What podcast with your host, Andrew Lee Miller, brought to you by Growth Experts. If you liked the episode, please subscribe. And if you really liked it, please share with other founders and entrepreneurs. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.